Hi everyone, it's Miss Sote. So a lot of you before break were requesting videos about how do I graph a circle on my calculator, because circles are really fun shapes to add if you're ever trying to make art. Circles are really important shapes that the SAT loves to test people on, and so it's a good feature to learn. Some of my classes have already learned about circles and some haven't. If you are in one of the classes that hasn't learned about circles yet, I would go check out the Desmos tutorial as well. It's really short, only a couple minutes, and it'll kind of give you the background information you need in order to graph it on your graphing calculator. So graphing a circle on a graphing calculator is not at all like graphing a circle on Desmos. So we kind of have to take some extra steps. But as always, we're going to click our thing on. I had it in a weird setting, but that's okay. And we're going to go straight to the y equals because again, we're back to graphing. And if you look at all the options, you can see that everything starts with y equals. But the equation of a circle is x minus h squared plus y minus k squared equals r squared. And so we can't write an equation like that. We have to solve for y and then type everything else out. So that's unfortunately the annoying trick that you have to do is if you're trying to graph a circle on Desmos, you have to first solve a circle equation for y. So I'm going to talk you through one example of how to solve for that, and then it'll be as easy as typing in the equation that we end up with. So if you look, let me zoom in a little. I've done all the steps, but I'm going to kind of go step by step with you all. So the first thing is to have an equation for a circle. So in this case, I have a circle that's been shifted left 2, up 3, and has a radius of 2. So I've given you this equation, and we need to get this y all alone. So step 1 is to just subtract the x plus 2 squared from both sides, because that's going to get us closer to having that y component all alone. So once I subtract both sides by x plus 2 squared, I'll end up with this. So I'll have y minus 3 squared equals 4 minus x plus 2 squared. But again, our goal is to just have y on this left side. So we need to get rid of the square and we need to get rid of the minus 3. And the first one we have to deal with in order to listen to PEMDAS is we have to deal with exponents first. And this is something we'll also talk about in a little bit in future classes, but the opposite of squaring something is taking the square root of it. So that's exactly what we're going to do. We're going to take the square root of both sides. And if you remember square roots at all, remember when you take the square root of two things, you have to have that plus or minus symbol because both cases can be included. So when I take the square root of both sides, I can now simplify the left side a little. So the square root of y minus 3 squared is just y minus 3. Unfortunately, we can't simplify the other side, because you can't break apart the 4 and the x plus 2 squared under a square root. They have to stay together, so there's really not much we can do to simplify that. So I'm actually just going to leave it as it is. But don't forget that plus or minus symbol. And then the very last step is we're so close to having y alone. So it's now y minus 3. We got to get rid of that minus 3. So we're just going to add 3 to both sides. And when we do that, we'll end up with y equals 3 plus or minus the square root of 4 minus x plus 2 squared. And this is where it's going to be really helpful to remember what the heck plus or minus means. And it's kind of nice because it means exactly what it says. You're either adding or you're subtracting. So we're just going to write two equations where each one has either a plus sign or a minus sign. So we'll end up with y equals 3 plus the square root of 4 minus x plus 2 squared. And then the second equation we're going to use is 3 minus the square root of 4 minus x plus 2 squared. So now all we have to do is type these two equations into our calculator. So let's go ahead and do that. So I'm going to put my, let's see if we can make room. I'll zoom out a little as well. Okay, so first thing we need to do is 3 plus. And then remember the square root is in orange right here. So you have to click the second button and then the square root button. And so now we're going to deal with what's inside of the square root, which is 4 minus x plus 2 squared. So I'm going to put my 4, then minus, then we need another set of parentheses, and we need to type in x plus 2. Close those parentheses, because remember that part is being squared. So I'm going to put my little caret symbol, and I'm going to put it squared. But here's where you have to be really careful, because we had parentheses here, but we also have to close the parentheses so that our calculator knows everything that was under the square root. So I also want to end with a parentheses. And let's see what happens when we just graph that. So I'm going to click the graph button. And if you look, our window's a little off, so I might zoom in a little bit more. So my x min will still be -10, but maybe my x max will be 2. And then my y min, maybe I'll go to 0 since it didn't seem like it was going that far below the x-axis or the y-axis. And if you look right here, you can see it's graphed the top half of a circle. So that's all that these two equations are doing, is it's graphing the top half, and then our second equation will graph the bottom half to make a nice full circle. So now we're going to do the same thing. All we're going to change is the minus sign. So now I'm going to have 3 minus the square root of 4 minus x plus 2 squared. And again, remember to close the last parentheses. Click enter. Now when I graph it, you can see it makes the whole circle. So unfortunately, it's a kind of long process. It's a lot easier on Desmos, but this is a skill that you'll probably need to use quite a lot if you continue taking math in future courses. So I'm glad that a lot of you asked for it. If you have any questions, let me know, and I will see you later.